All right, let me share my screen and we can get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Dina Cohen, and today I am going to be presenting on something really important that is how to recognize and treat the symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is OCD. And the reason why I'm choosing to do this presentation is because people are not understanding of obsessive compulsive disorder. People are not recognizing when it shows up in their office. So this presentation was prepared for clinicians, and if you're suffering from what might be OCD, this could be beneficial for you too. But this is so that you can pick up if your clients are having symptoms of OCD, because some of the ways that we do therapy can actually be detrimental to those that are suffering. So it's important to recognize when it's showing up. So this part, most of us know from graduate school, it's or just from living, what OCD actually is. OCD is a cycle of intrusive and distressing thoughts, images and urges, or doubts, which we call obsessions, followed by behaviors or mental rituals, which are compulsions, aimed at reducing anxiety or gaining certainty. These compulsions provide temporary relief, but ultimately strengthen the OCD cycle. Okay, you knew that.
And with your OCD diagnosis, was this like through therapy online? Were you literally in the desert when you found out? Like, how did this
I
work?
go to therapy via Zoom every week.
Okay.
So my therapist had been kind of like, I think, just registering this for a long time, but I think really like let me know what I was going through was OCD, and it wasn't like just anxiety or being stressed. It was like this real insidious like disease or sickness or disorder that I was struggling with, and it was interesting because I started putting all these pieces together from my childhood and these different rituals that I've had my whole life, and I'm like, wow, like I've been struggling with this thing that I thought I was so alone in, and like looking up online like these delusions that you can have, for the lack of a better word, of like how common they are.
You're sharing this like pretty serious thing, and I'm like smiling, but I'm letting you know that I'm only smiling not because I'm like this is great,
Mm-hmm.
but I've had OCD my entire life.
Oh wow.
I've been in therapy forever. I've been on medication forever,
Mm-hmm.
and it's. I think like when I was like 5 years old, I was like, why do I have scary thoughts that I can't share with anyone? I'm a kid. Was it surprising for you, or were you kind of like, oh, I've always felt like that?
It was surprising. I think I was under the influence of the idea that like OCD, like you said, was like I need to wash my hands 100 times. I
Right.
watched those like True Life
Yeah.
things on
Yeah.
MTV or whatever back in the day, where it's like I have OCD and the girl's like making her bed 300 times. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much more there was to it, and how many layers to this like problem there are, and how a lot of it has nothing to do with like physical touch. A lot of it's like this mental
A
obsession,
lot
and
of
like
stuff in the head.
yeah, and I think that's really what my, I don't know, strain or whatever it is has done. And it wasn't until someone mentioned to me that my therapist kind of like put it into my head of like that is OCD, and that I was able to put the pieces together.
Okay, that was Noah Kahn, the singer. So what OCD is not, and what people may be getting confused about, is it's not just about being neat or organized, or simply liking things clean, or perfectionism, or even a psychosis or loss of reality. It's not attention seeking. It's not a personality quirk. It's not ordinary worrying, and it is not always visible to others. So there are a lot of different types of OCD, and these are the common ones, but there are more than these, but I'll just go through a few. So OCD basically attacks what you care most about. So it'll attack literally your values. So harm OCD is people with harm OCD experience intrusive fears about hurting themselves or others, even though they typically do not want to act on these thoughts. The thoughts are ego dystonic, meaning they go against the person's values and identity. Examples of this could be a fear of stabbing a loved one while they're cooking, or a fear of pushing someone in front of traffic, a fear of losing control or becoming violent. Many people suffering from harm OCD avoid knives, sharp objects, or being alone with others due to shame and fear. One that I'm seeing pretty frequently is religious or scrupulosity OCD. So scrupulosity OCD involves excessive fears about morality, sin, offending God, or being a bad person. Individuals often seek certainty that they are morally or spiritually okay. And examples could be a fear that a normal thought is sinful, or that it may look like excessive confession or reassurance seeking. I would like to mention here that different cultures have a higher prevalence of certain types of OCD. For example, in my community, which is the Jewish ultra-Orthodox community, scrupulosity is most common. That could look like repeating prayers over and over again until they feel perfect. Another common type of OCD is relationship OCD, or ROCD. People with ROCD experience obsessive doubt and anxiety about their relationships, partner, or feelings. They often seek certainty that the relationship is right. Example, do I really love my partner? What if I'm with the wrong person? Constantly seeking feelings or attraction, comparing their relationship to others. These doubts can become all-consuming and lead to reassurance seeking or emotional checking. There's also sexual OCD. Sexual OCD involves intrusive, unwanted sexual thoughts, images, or fears that cause intense distress. These thoughts are ego dystonic and deeply unsettling to the individual. Example, fear of being sexually attracted to children, fear of being attracted to family members, fear that intrusive thoughts mean hidden desires. Clients are often terrified to disclose these symptoms due to shame and fear of judgment. Then there's contamination OCD. Contamination OCD involves excessive fears about germs, illness, toxins, bodily fluids, or feeling contaminated emotionally or morally. Examples, excessive hand washing, avoiding public surfaces, fear of spreading illness to loved ones, feeling contaminated, often after contact with certain people or places. Compulsions are aimed at reducing anxiety or preventing feared harm. There's also symmetry or order OCD. Individuals with this form of OCD experience intense discomfort when things feel uneven, incomplete, or not just right. Examples, arranging items symmetrically, repeating actions until they feel correct, counting rituals, extreme distress when objects are misaligned. The distress is often described as an unbearable internal feeling that something is off. There's also existential OCD. Existential OCD involves obsessive questioning about reality, existence, meaning, or consciousness that becomes repetitive and distressing rather than philosophical curiosity. Examples, what if life is not real? How do I know I truly exist? What happens after death? Endless rumination about meaning and certainty. Important clinical point. Many compulsions are mental and invisible, including rumination, which is the mental replaying and overanalyzing of thoughts in an attempt to gain certainty, solve the fear, or feel reassured. Unlike healthy problem solving, rumination keeps the person stuck in repetitive mental loops. Example, a client may spend hours asking themselves, what if I really meant that thought? What if I secretly want to hurt someone? What if I made the wrong decision? The more they analyze, the more uncertain and distressed they become. Then there's reassurance seeking. It involves repeatedly asking others for comfort, certainty, or validation in order to reduce anxiety. While reassurance may temporarily calm the person, it reinforces the OCD cycle over time. Example, do you think I'm a bad person? Are you sure I didn't offend them? Do you think our relationship is okay? Googling symptoms repeatedly or for certainty, the relief is temporary and the need for reassurance usually returns quickly. There's also mental reviewing. Mental reviewing involves replaying memories, conversations, or events in an attempt to check for mistakes, danger, or certainty. Example, replaying a conversation to make sure nothing offensive was said. Mentally reviewing whether they locked the door correctly. Rechecking memories to prove they would never hurt someone. Clients often believe they are being careful or responsible, but the reviewing becomes compulsive and exhausting. Then there are counting or praying rituals. Some compulsions involve silently counting or repeating phrases or praying in a very specific way to reduce anxiety or prevent feared outcomes. Example, repeating a prayer until it feels perfect, counting to certain numbers to feel safe, repeating phrases mentally to cancel out bad thoughts. If interrupted, the individual may feel intense distress and feel compelled to start over.
Yeah, so I have OCD.
Oh my gosh, I have OCD too.
You're kidding me. That makes me feel so much better because this entire time while I've been driving, all I'm thinking about is like maybe I lose control and I just drive us into the lake.
Oh, no, that's not what I was talking about. I just like everything really clean and organized.
Oh.
Mm. Yeah, this is what, people who have OCD speak to people who don't, who claim they have OCD. They just use the term lightly. It could be very invalidating.
All right, time for bed. Why hasn't that person spoken to you in a while? Is it because they hate you? Maybe everybody's saying bad things about you, and maybe they're trying to cancel you for something you didn't say or do. And what if a nuclear bomb goes off and you don't have enough food or water or weapons? And do you have a contingency plan? And do you have enough money for anything you might need? And maybe you should be working instead of sleeping. And are you hungry? Because if you're hungry, maybe you should eat something. But maybe eating this close to bed will mess with your sleep. And maybe you should eat less. And what if all this anxiety gives you cancer? And what would people say about you if you died? And maybe you should have a nightcap, or maybe you shouldn't, because that would make you an alcoholic. And when was the last time you went to a doctor? And maybe you're already dying, and maybe you should look up your symptoms on WebMD. And how close are we to The Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah, it's intense. So, what causes OCD? We really don't know. There's a lot of theories about this, but what we do know is that there usually is a genetic predisposition. So, the cycle, and it's actually similar to the addiction cycle. There's usually an internal or external trigger, external being something that happens in the environment, like, I don't know, your spouse gets really mad at you and is yelling at you, or it could be internal where you can perceive something and just think something. And then the obsessive thoughts start, and then what will usually happen is that the client or you would be feeling, I feel uncomfortable, like I feel uncomfortable with whatever's going on in my mind. And then a compulsion, which is something that they do that will help them with the obsession or to remove the obsession. So I work a lot with porn addiction, and people will say that, the way they quiet their mind would be to, by using this media. Maybe I'm just giving an example of something that shows up in my office. And then the person will feel temporary relief. The obsessions will subside, and then they'll just start again, and the obsessions will just continue. So, some common clinical mistakes that a person can make, when like a clinician could make when working with somebody with OCD, is, so when we're taught, somebody will be like, is it okay that, or do you really think that this is true, and if we excessively reassure them, yes, it's true. Like for my client that she says her family, I lost a lot of money and that was really stupid, right? It was really stupid. Dina, was it really stupid? I think it was really stupid. Like, and week after week, she's going on and on about the investment that she made and how dumb it is. And everybody must hate her. It's like, no, you're okay. You didn't make a mistake. Or like, that's actually strengthening the muscle of these obsessive thoughts. The way I like to think of it, as like OCD thoughts being, it gets stronger the more you engage in this reassurance. Also, by debating the obsessions logically, like, did you lose the money? Didn't you lose the money? This is also strengthening this thought process. And also when you validate the obsession content instead of noticing the process. So noticing the process would be something like, I see that you're once again ruminating, or, that might be judgmental. I see that you're spending a lot of time thinking about that mistake that you did 10 years ago. Did you notice that that's what your mind is doing right now? Or even better, did you notice that your obsessive thoughts are ruminating or thinking about things that happened in the past that that you can't change now? I'm noticing that you're doing that. Do you notice that too? Or trying to provide certainty, like, oh, it's definitely not your fault, or like, again, for the client of mine that's using porn, and his wife is like, I won't I'm sorry, I won't, be able to be close to you until you stop using it. It's like, okay, when you stop using, she's going to be close to you, because he's like, when will she be with me? When will she be with me? When will she be with me? And it's like, when, I can't promise that. In other words, there's no certainty. Like, we don't know if she's ever going to want to be close to you again. So if by you saying she definitely will, you're actually feeding that muscle. Okay, treating intrusive thoughts as hidden desires, especially when we're talking about like a harm OCD, like, oh, like I think I might have ran someone over. Let me go check if I ran someone over. I think when I was driving, I think I might have killed somebody. It's like, maybe treating intrusive thoughts as hidden desires, like, do you have a desire for murder or whatever? Like, overly analyzing the why on why, he or she is thinking these things. So the goal is not certainty. The goal is learning to tolerate uncertainty. That's the key. In other words, whatever it is that you're ruminating about, I can't help you. We can't provide certainty. It just notice. We want you to notice that you're having these thoughts, right? Okay. So treatment options. So these are the treatments for OCD specialists. In other words, this is what they'll do if you're a client, or if you are going for treatment. Some people will use CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and then there's exposure and response prevention, which is officially the gold standard in OCD treatment, which is, it's ERP. Medication for some is helpful, not for everybody, but people do say that it can help. Support groups are beneficial because there's a loneliness, like, you feel alone in this disorder, and knowing that there are other people out there going through this, it helps with the loneliness. ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy, can help people also. And psychoeducation is once you understand OCD and the way it works, and it can be very helpful. Now, the treatment can be effective. There is recovery. Two clinicians that do not have specialized OCD training. So you're a regular clinician and you're doing your thing. And what should you do if, how do you prepare for this? And what can you do if you're not going to be the specialist, but you don't want to make things worse, and you want to do at least helps in some way? So firstly, take the time to learn the symptoms of the various ways that OCD can present, so that you recognize it when it shows up. You don't want to make things worse, so you need to know. Offer resources if you suspect OCD. I will be doing a slide, which you could screenshot, or you can reach out to me if you want more resources, or you can just Google around yourself, so that the client is empowered to find the right help. And you want to provide the basic psychoeducation regarding OCD. Could be via YouTube video, or again, what the resources I'll provide are some. Now, you also want to normalize the OCD experience, and make the client recognize that there are many people suffering from OCD, and it is not so unusual. Many more than are admitting to, is my opinion. And you want to reassure clients that recovery is definitely possible. There's been some great work with this. Okay. Okay. Practical tools for clients. So there's a book called Brain Lock by Jeffrey Schwartz. I am a fan. This is the basics. So the first thing to notice is that to be as the impartial spectator of your thoughts, which means you sort of transcend and watch the way your mind is working, and sort of notice your thoughts. So firstly, by relabeling. So if you're having these thoughts that are just going sort of round and round your head, these ruminations or whatever, you relabel it by calling the intrusive thoughts what they are. That's just my OCD talking. And then you reattribute, why do I have these thoughts and compulsions? And then you recognize it's a medical condition called OCD, where your brain sort of gets locked. It's a brain lock in this circular thought process. It's genetic. There's nothing, you didn't cause this. It's not your fault. You're not weak. It just is the way your brain is, and then refocus. What do I do when I notice, okay, I'm having these intrusive thoughts? My brain is in a lock. And then so you refocus. You take at least 15 minutes to do something else, and you got to figure out what that will be. Is it going for a walk? Is it playing basketball? Is it, music, art, whatever? That can be, and it's very hard to sort of not engage with the intrusive thoughts, but but like it says in the Brain Lock book, no pain, no gain. Like you don't want to feed the intrusive thought muscle. Okay. Now with practice, if you relabel and reattribute and refocus over time, it'll revalue. The quicker you will be able to dismiss these thoughts as garbage thoughts. Like I'm having garbage thoughts now. They are not going to help me in any way. So here are some resources. These are my favorite resources. First of all, the International OCD Foundation, or IOCDF.org. And here are a couple of books. A book, Getting Over OCD by Jonathan Abramowitz, and then a book called Freedom from Obsessive Compulsive Disorder by Jonathan Grayson. A book, The Mental Compulsions Workbook for OCD by Lauren Rosen. A book called Brain Lock by Jeffrey Schwartz. A podcast called Thrust and Thrive with Tara Montazeri. And there's another podcast called The OCD Stories, also fantastic. And there's a YouTube channel by Katie DeAff called OCD Recovery, which is very helpful. You are not your OCD. Although OCD might be loud, it does not get the final say on how you live. Remember that. Thank you. You can reach me at 647-831-3730 or dinahcohen@gmail.com or on my website. And you can follow me on Instagram at Marriage Tools. And thank you.